Hello, I'm Jan Czerwiński and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Now we're going to be looking at the situation in Germany. With Friedrich Merz set to become Germany's new chancellor, questions remain as to the country's direction. Can a new coalition steer Berlin away from the looming threat of populism exemplified by the AfD? Will Germany embrace the challenge of co-leading Europe's defense and security challenges? This is all very important, especially in the light of Germany's role within the European Union. And we're going to be discussing this with our guest today. Joining us is Tobias Spöri, visiting professor at the University of Vienna. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning.
So let's begin with a statement from Friedrich Merz. He said that the American establishment under Donald Trump has lost interest in Europe, that there is this feeling of indifference. Do you think that he has compelling reasons to say that? And also, how will this guide the German foreign policy, for example, moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think Friedrich Merz was quite crystal clear on, like, after the election on Sunday, being a very convinced person of the originally quite well transatlantic relations, that he was saying, like, we can't really rely on the US government anymore, although he would like to, but now it has become very clear that Europe is on its own. They have to step up their foreign and security policy game, and it's clear that they can't rely on the US anymore and the US government.
And by the way, do you think that this is actually the end of the so-called collective West, something that Putin has always been rallying against? Do you think that we're seeing the collective West actually fracturing?
I mean, we see this already in the first days or weeks of the Trump government, that he has clearly lost his interest in good transatlantic relations, and that he is focusing more on China, but also on restoring or increasing the relationship with Putin. It's also related to business, etc. So I think it's what he managed to do in quite some short time to really crumble the relationship with Europe, with the EU. So it is obviously a big problem for the EU. But we see already, I mean, you already just showed that Macron was in DC yesterday and so on. And I think Merz will join him in trying to pull Europe together to secure their position.
So in the light of all these developments, do you think that the new German government is ready to meet the challenges? I mean, will be ready to meet them when it is formed? And that, of course, also brings us to the question of who will form part of this government.
Yeah, I mean, it's really up to, as always in critical situations, up to political leadership. And I mean, so far, Friedrich Merz seems to be quite convinced that he can really manage to kind of meet the international challenges. Speaking of Russia, China, the US, all the things we've just mentioned. But at the same time, I mean, the domestic situation in Germany is also not kind of smooth sailing. Speaking of the economy, speaking of a strong AfD, a very pessimistic mood in society. So he has to be successful on all fronts, if you want to say so, in relatively short time. And that's also why he wants to have the government formed by Easter.
So now, let's actually take a look at the AfD for a moment, because we've had a record turnout of 82%, the biggest for quite a while. But also, we had the AfD reaching a record high of 20%. What does it tell us about German politics? And do you think that this could be a problem for the government moving forwards?
I mean, it's certainly a problem also for the EU if a party in Germany, a key country of the EU, campaigning for a German exit of the EU, abandoning the euro, etc., with a very critical stance towards the EU, receives like 1 out of 5 votes in the election. I mean, for the government, I think it's going to be fine. I mean, most likely it's going to be a government between the conservatives, the CDU, CSU, Friedrich Merz, and the Social Democrats. I mean, they, like the Grand Coalition, as it's called in Germany. So they should be fine in terms of the majority of the parliament, but certainly it will mean a big change of the political landscape in Germany, because the AfD is going to be the second largest party, the biggest opposition party. I think they were having even bigger hopes, and you can already see this from some statements coming from the AfD, that they want to have even more votes. But in comparison to the last election in 21, they doubled. So the election is a big success for the AfD. And now the question is, can the other parties and the new government deliver in order to also maybe convince some AfD voters to return to more pluralistic democratic parties?
Would you say that it's a problem also that the AfD has actually hijacked the public debate on certain issues? For example, migration. The AfD has dominated much of the debate, and so actually mainstream parties started to be more hardline on that issue as well. Do you think that this could be something that the government will have to be dealing with, i.e. crafting policies which will also serve to appease a certain part of the public that could be voting for the AfD in future elections?
But yes, certainly. I mean, what we can see is that the AfD was really pushing the other parties further to the right. And I think this is also something which is concerning. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, because in the campaign, Friedrich Merz was really taking a turn to the right in terms of migration. So he really, and I mean, what the AfD was saying is basically, okay, now Friedrich Merz has understood, and he's just copying our policies, which are clearly against what, for instance, the SPD, the Social Democrats, want to pursue. So it's also going to be interesting to see how Merz is going to kind of balance this out. I mean, sticking to his promises, and also kind of making a coalition relatively fast possible with the Social Democrats. I mean, if he's not kind of sticking to his promises in terms of migration and closing the borders, all the things he has been saying during the campaign, I mean, obviously, AfD is going to be the first one saying, like, hey, in the campaign, you really promised something, and now you're not delivering. So this is also a crucial situation for Merz.
Now, Friedrich Merz is a great friend of Ukraine. He has been supportive of Ukraine for quite a while now. But will he be able to rein in the entire crowd of the so-called Russlandversteher? And I'm not just referring to the AfD, because these people, these Russia understanders, have been present in many parties across the political spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, if you look at the AfD and their position towards Russia, but also, for instance, the Sarah Wagenknecht alliance, which barely made it into parliament, so the way how it looks, that they missed 13,000 votes to meet the threshold to make it to the parliament. So you have a couple of voices that are very open towards better or good relationships, good relations to Russia again. I think what is going to be crucial also in order to support Ukraine is what's going to happen in Germany with the constitutional debt break. Because, I mean, Germany could certainly do more, but obviously the constitutional debt break is making this not possible. And it was also kind of one of the key topics of argument between the former traffic light coalition. So I think it's going to be crucial to see what's going to happen to the debt break, because if the debt break is going to be reformed in a form, Germany could certainly support Ukraine more.
No, of course, but I'm also referring to this sort of sentiment that, you know, some German elites are like, we shouldn't be focusing too much on ideology. Let's do business with our neighbors. And they also count Russia as a neighbor. There used to be these long, regrettable traditions of doing business with Russia, like Nord Stream, for example. Do you think that this consensus that used to exist within the German political elite that Russia is worth talking to and doing business with is now gone, or could it actually come back?
I mean, I think if it's really down to the government, of course, and Friedrich Merz has a very clear stand towards Russia, towards Ukraine, and also the supposedly new leader, Boris Pistorius, currently defense minister, is more siding with Merz when it comes to Ukraine, for instance, in comparison to the outgoing Chancellor Scholz. So I think in this regard, it's fine. But certainly, I mean, what we see in Germany when it comes to the public mood, and you have some parties saying, like, hey, we pay a high price for not getting cheap energy from Russia, is also to kind of frankly talk to people why it is necessary that Germany, that the EU supports the Ukraine stronger, given the situation and the voices coming from the US. So I think there is a big task for Merz, again, to really come up with a story, a narrative why Germany needs to support Ukraine more and why a loss of Ukraine would be also crucial and fatal for the EU and Germany.
Tobias Spöri was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you.
And I'm Jonasz Rewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.